Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Bag, a show all about the New York Mets for fans young and old. So, how did you feel about last night's game? Tough loss, right? We had our ace on the mound. Things didn't go really as we expected. The bats didn't show up when they needed to, but it's going to be okay. Let's all take one step back from the edge. We have Max Scherzer going today, Chris Bassett going tomorrow. We just need one win of those two to control our destiny. We would control the tiebreaker. So if we win out against Washington, and even if the Braves win out against the Marlins, we still would go and win the division. So we just need to relax. Again, it was one game. And when you think about it, one game across the entire season, every game is important. So tonight's game is just like last night's game. The game after that is just like tonight's game. They all count as one win or one loss. Okay, but I just want to tell you something. Before you ride this Mets roller coaster and you think, everything is going to go south, we're going to blow this, you have to remember one thing. Winning is hard, right? We said in a previous episode, the Mets have only had a finite number, 27 to be exact, winning seasons in their history. Okay, winning is very difficult. Performing in baseball is very difficult. The best hitters make an out 7 out of 10 times they come to the plate. The best teams lose 4 out of every 10 games they play. It is a very difficult game to play and a very difficult game to win. What's even harder is winning championships. Okay? So we just all have to appreciate that this is a really tough game that all of these players are playing. We know our Mets. They're trying the hardest. We're going to be fine. Now, before we go any further, I just want to remind everyone, if you like the content on this channel, please like and subscribe. Leave comments on what I'm saying in the comments and help my channel grow. So, I want to tell you a little bit of a story. 98 and 64. Does anyone know what that is? Well, we've won 98 games this year, but we haven't lost 64, so that's not the record this year. This was the Mets record in 1985, the year before they won the World Series. Now, you might be saying to yourself, I don't remember the Mets going to the playoffs in 1985. Actually, they didn't. They came in second place to the St. Louis Cardinals by 3 games. 3 games. There was no wild card at that time. You had to win the division. At the time, there were only 2 divisions. So the Cardinals were actually in the National League East. So the Mets, after being terrible for the early 80s, started to build a better team in 83, 84. They got a little better. They won 90 games in 84. 85, like I said, they won 98 games, but they still could not get past the Cardinals. And they came in second place 3 games behind. 1986 comes around. This is their record. 108 and 54. Incredible. Now, if you remember that season, at least when I think about that season, I recall watching games. The Mets would score in the first inning. Lenny Dykstra, Wally Backman, Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter. They would score runs. Basically, the game was over. First inning, second inning. The Mets had a great pitching staff. They did not give up many runs. They still lost 54 times that year. However, everyone remembers that they won the National League East by 20 games. That's how good they were that year. Okay? Now, something else to think about. At the end of that season, they actually went on a 5-game losing streak. And everyone started to panic. They were up by 20 games, but they went on a 5-game losing streak, which was unthought of. All right. I want to tell you about another thing. If you remember the 86 season, they steamrolled through the National League East. Now, at the time, they only had 2 rounds of playoffs. So you first played, there was no wild card. So you played the winner of the West. Okay. And in 1986, the winner of the West was the Houston Astros, who were a good team, but they were not in the same class as the 86 Mets. During that series, that championship series, National League Championship Series, the Astros threw at the Mets Mike Scott. Mike Scott was an ex-Met who, quite frankly, was a mediocre pitcher with the Mets, at best. He befuddled the Mets that entire series. The Mets claim he was scuffing the ball, but the Mets could not get any hits off him. They went to the 6th game against Houston. It was back and forth. The Mets really did not play up to their potential. They went to the 6th game. They were losing 3-0 in the 9th inning, and knowing that Game 7 was going to be pitched by the Astros by Mike Scott. So they knew that if they went to a Game 7, they were going to be in trouble. The entire Game 6, they did not hit until the 9th inning, and they staged a dramatic comeback to tie the game in the 9th, and then this game went into extra innings, went 16 innings, and the Mets finally won. So that was their first hurdle. That was their first test. Then we go to the World Series against the Red Sox. Again, this Red Sox team was a good team, but nowhere near the caliber of the Mets. The Mets lose the first 2 games at Shea Stadium. They go on the road to Boston. They win the next 2 games. So it's tied 2-2. They come back to New York for the famous Game 5. They come back for Game 5. They lose Game 5. They come back to New York and for the incredible Game 6. It's a back and forth game. The Mets are tied going into extra innings. The Red Sox take a 2-run lead in the 10th inning. The Mets are down to their last out. I show you this picture because this is Keith Hernandez. Okay, Keith Hernandez made the second out of the 10th inning in the 86 World Series of Game 6. This is a picture as he's walking back to the dugout after hitting a long fly ball to Dave Henderson for the second out. At that point, I remember watching this game and thinking, you know what? The Mets were the better team. They may be losing this game, and they would have lost the series. I could not believe what I was watching. However, within the span of maybe 10 minutes, it went from this to this. And we all know the history. The 2-strike hits by Ray Knight, the little bloopers by Gary Carter, Kevin Mitchell, and then, of course, the little roller behind the bag that drove in, hit by Mookie Wilson, that drives in Ray Knight with the winning run. People often forget that this did not win the World Series. The Mets still had to play a Game 7. And in that Game 7, they were actually losing again. And they came back and they won it, and the rest is history. But I think the thing to remember is that winning is difficult. Even the best teams, even the 86 Mets, had their back against the wall. They kept fighting. They never, never, never gave up. So, keep your heads high. We're in Atlanta tonight. We're in Atlanta tomorrow. We need to win one of the games. We can do it. We're the Mets. We are resilient. And I leave you with this thought. Let's go Mets.